I used to work a lot in the ERs, and very often we get a certain kind of personality would make threats of suicide. Very often they would actually act out, and they often, I don't know what it is, they would take Tylenol, overdose, which is outrageously dangerous. They don't know it, but it is very dangerous, and it takes a lot to fix it. And anyway, so one time I'm talking to the ER docs. I go, look, don't wake me up and call me until she's wearing black lip liner.
Okay.
And it's like, what do you mean? I go, like she barfs after you give her charcoal.
Yeah.
If she comes and saying, I took Tylenol, I don't care if she did or not. You give her charcoal.
Acts as an absorbent, I would guess. Is
Exactly.
That what it is?
Yeah. And it's really unpleasant. But it is a consequence. Look, if you're going to say you overdosed on Tylenol, you get the charcoal. Don't call me unless her lips are black.
Well, we've started again, and we're now live. Another day or another week has gone by, and we're together.
Great.
What did you think of last week's show?
I thought it was great. I think it's important to realize that parents can make a difference in what their child does, and it's not going to help but to shelter them from everything. Life is full of hard knocks, and most people adjust to that. That's learning. These kids can learn.
Oh, unbelievably, yeah.
Yeah. So, don't impede their learning. Don't think, look, the fact that they have a diagnosis of autism or autistic spectrum or whatever means X, Y, Z. I don't know. I need to know the child. You as a parent know the child. A great deal, as we talked last night, I have MS, multiple sclerosis, but it's so variable that just because you have that diagnosis, you don't know what you're getting. You don't.
When a parent goes through that initial process and of the diagnosis, it must be just so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so they go through a grieving process, and all of a sudden they become experts on autism. The reality of autism is that if there's a 1.5 million kids on the spectrum, there's 1.5 million different looks at autism.
They all present differently.
They do, but the one commonality is that they're just kids.
Yeah.
And I have never known kids that don't do better when they're working out with other kids, and that's not just in sports, but also in school classes and just doing things that kids do. It might be a little bit more difficult as the kids get older to integrate them into those programs, but they still benefit from the experience associated with it.
Yes. Well, I know there are challenges involved. In fact, I wanted to hear about your first case that you worked on, because I think that is very illustrative of what's going on.
I was 49, I think, 49, and I'd had my degrees, and I'd spent the 1,000 hours it took to work with kids with on the spectrum, and I did my student project, and all of a sudden, I'm a guy. I'm an IBI therapist, and so I get a call, and they said, "Gosh, would you mind going and working with this kid?" And I was all excited about it. So I meet this kid, and he is fetal alcohol. Well, fetal alcohol is a condition that develops and affects the capacity to learn. He was also had some autistic tendencies, and I said, yeah, great. And now I are one. So let's go on and see what it's all about. So I go over to the school, and I'm the oldest guy in the world over at the school. You know, the principal's 40. And so I meet the kid, and he's 14. His dad's in prison. Mom's a meth guy. And he's trying. You know, he's a good little athlete, but he's bouncing from one foster home care to another. And he's in a ER class, extended resource class, not an ERR, which is for, he's in a class that with some low functioning kids, and he's not low functioning, but he's trying to fit in. He has moved into this new group home and foster care, and they've assigned me to him, so I go and observe him in class. And the class is run by a kid, 28. He has a degree, but he has no credential, no teaching credential, and he's the 9th grade assistant football coach, so he has now got a job, and he's the job that they need him filled for is an ER class. You're working with, you know, and so I go in there, and I've coached kids since I was in my 20s, raised my old kids, and so this class is got 10 or 12 kids in it, and my kid's there. So I watch him, and he has a behavior. Not a big behavior, but just a behavior. You know, he's yelling at one of his classmates. But again, you got to understand that fetal alcohol is a tough thing. Short-term memory is affected, so he can't remember what he did 20 minutes later.
Yeah.
It's just a function of what it is. So if you work with kids with fetal alcohol, there's a list of things that you don't want to do. You know, you want to give him some transition time. You want to make sure that he understands the parameters of the class. You understand what his routine is. All the things that we would normally want to do to reinforce good behaviors. Well, so I had sent this list to this young teacher. This was his first year. He'd been teaching for 3 months in this class, and he didn't like this kid, and it was obvious. You know, the kid was not an easy kid to like. You know, he tried too hard. You know, kids try too hard to fit in. They just didn't like it. So early in first or second period, I can't remember now. It's been a while. Teacher makes an announcement that PE, they're going to play dodgeball. Well, this kid really likes this idea. And so he, you know, he's all excited about it. And he's talking to all these kids and everybody in his class, and you know, say, hey, 5th period coming up, we're going to have dodgeball, and gosh, we're going to break it up into these teams. But earlier in that period, he'd had that behavior, and again, it wasn't an outrageous behavior, and the teacher had said something to him, but the kid had stopped, and it was done, and so 5th period comes along, and they're lining up to go to the gym to play volleyball or dodgeball, and the teacher goes, hey, you can't come. The guy says, well, why not? And he says, well, remember back in 2nd period. And the kid goes, just crushed. And he starts to have a behavior. He's disappointed. He really doesn't know what he had done back that would have caused this really fun activity to happen. But again, it's guy's class, and all he was trying to do was be punitive to this kid. Now, whenever we're dealing with behaviors, there's an antecedent, what was happening, the behavior, what he did, and then the consequences. Well, if he would have said that at that time, hey, you shouldn't do this, go time out or do something, we can understand that because there's a consequence for that specific behavior. 3 hours later, this kid has no concept or reality of what he did three hours earlier, and all of a sudden that's just a punitive thing. So go into the gym, and they played dodgeball, and kid's sitting there, and he's about ready to have a meltdown, and I just said, hey, gosh, go in and play. I went over to the teacher and says, hey, he's learned his lesson. He doesn't remember what he did. I don't even remember what he did, and he needs a player. He's going to go berserk. And so they let him go in and play, and then after class, I was pulled aside and said, well, we no longer need your services because, well, that's the reality of what it is. It was his class, but what he was doing was wrong as a teacher. Yeah. And it's not because I am so all-knowing. It was just that if I felt it was inappropriate, gosh, what do you think the kid was feeling? And so we just put another nail in this coffin. So this kid had a routine that we needed to follow, and so I had been originally called because the foster parent had sent a letter into, they call them DDAs, Development Disability Agencies, requesting IBI services because this young kid was getting violent. Okay, he was going up. So again, this kid was, dad's in prison, like I said, mom's gone to foster care. And so I go over, and we're off of school at 3 o'clock, and we go over to this house, but he can't go into the house till 5:30. No food, no water, no snacks, so we go out and do what we do. I go out, we go to the park, I had a football with me, and a skateboard, and all the things that good IBI guys do, because you got to find out what the kid's doing. And so we stop and get him a snack, and we do all this great stuff, and 5:30 comes around, and take him home. He's tired, he wants to go home, and whenever you have a developmental disability, whether it's autism or in this case fetal alcohol with autistic tendencies, going from one event to another without giving a chance to be adaptive to that, the transition time becomes very important. So instead of allowing the kid to come in, maybe walk around the room or go to his bedroom or just get something to eat or anything else, the first thing that happens is that the foster mother, she's sitting at a desk, and she is a very big woman. So big that she was unable to easily get out of a chair and stand for any duration of time. And instead of allowing this child to come in, the first thing that happens is she starts engaging him. Asking him a question, and he'd try to answer the question. And 10 minutes of this, the kid gets frustrated, and he just blows up and he runs down to his room. Well, earlier in the month, these behaviors, the same type of behaviors day after day. And so they solved that problem by him running down the hallways and slamming. And maybe not the most appropriate response for this kid, but they took the door off the hinges. So now they took away his privacy. Didn't allow for an appropriate slamming of a door. My kids used to slam doors also. I do. The wife gets a little bit mad at me, and just a normal thing. Maybe not the most, but an appropriate response based upon what we knew. Well, they solved that problem, and so the escalation was no longer that he could run down the hallway, slam the door. The new escalation was just pushing the woman. Get out of my face type of thing. Gosh, I've had enough. I've tried to answer your questions. Well, as I became more familiar with the people, I also understood that they had had a new bathroom established. And he couldn't use the bathroom because it was brand new, so he couldn't use a towel. So instead of being able to go to the bathroom, he had to use a hand urinal. Now, a hand urinal is just nothing more than a piss can. So they've taken away his everybody needs privacy.
Yeah.
At night, he was locked into his room. The door had been closed and a padlock placed on him, so he couldn't get out. He was placed and medicated at 8 o'clock. Well, this might have been all good and well for a guy who's never seen this type of situation. This is insanity to me. So I wrote a letter, and I said, gosh, best to get him out of this environment. I'm sure one of the things that they required him to do, now he knows who his mom and dad is. He might not see him, but he still has that emotional attachment to him. And they were requiring him to call her mom. Well, he didn't want to do that. He just wanted a place to be safe at and do the things that he needed to do. So I wanted to go talk to his counselor. And in most instances, a counselor has some sort of credential. He's spent a few months doing something to notice. And so I went and visited with a guy, and the guy had got a BA in psychology 15 years earlier, and he was providing counseling not only to this kid, but a whole group of kids in this from this family that he'd done it, and getting paid a pretty good wage to do it, without any real understanding of the dynamics of. So I wrote a note to before I even knew this guy, I wrote him a note saying, "Hey, this is what my observations of what's happened in this class or in this foster care place." And I wrote it to the state also, and I wrote it to the DDA. And again, I'm only on a job a week, and they said, "Gosh, Wayne, hey, we appreciate all this, but we are going to need your services any longer." And the reason is that there aren't a lot of foster parents out there willing to take tough kids like this. And they've been doing it for 20 years, and this is the system that they worked, and it was working. And just because they had and it wasn't their problem, it was his problem. So I don't know what happened to this kid, but whatever happened wasn't good. You know, he was bound for failure. And the point is that this kid was trying. He had some autistic tendencies, and gosh, all I want to do is fit in. And the first thing we do, not only in the classroom, is we become punitive, or we don't allow them to experience the joy of just participating. And that's not to say that that's what happens, but that's what happens when they bring guys in like me. An IBI therapist is last resort.
Yeah. Let's
change your behavior. It's going to take these type of things. Well, you don't have to do that when they're 4 years old or 5 or 6 or 8. But when you're at 15, 16, 17, there's a problem. So you shouldn't have asked me that question. That was, you know how emotional that one becomes.
Well, yeah. And I think that for all kids, typically developing and autistic, but especially kids on the spectrum, we need to realize that the consequence has to be very close to the problem.
The behavior.
Otherwise, it's no good at all.
But I think that's true of just kids in general, isn't it?
It is.
Gosh, if done something wrong, if you crack him in the head right then, gosh, he knows I shouldn't be doing that. But if he does something and 6 hours later, you walk up behind and say,
"Yeah,
what's that for?" Yeah, what's that for? Well, same thing that happened earlier in the story.
Yeah, it really should be very close in time.
It is in time. One of the things that is important when dealing with all kids is structure of their day. Even more so where you're in it with an environment with autism where their short-term memory is at flux.
Yeah.
They need to know and understand what's expected of them. Well, if they don't know that, and you bring something new in, their reaction is going to be, "I'm afraid."
And part of that is, that's why parenting is so hard, because it's not when it's convenient that I'll do it, but it's all the time, because I never know when something's going to happen. And I may be in the middle of the third quarter of a good game and I'm watching on TV, and then I need to parent. Well, you know what? It's not convenient then. It'll be convenient in an hour. Well, that's too late.
Because they don't have any understanding of what occurred for that parenting to occur.
And so part of the issue that I have worked with a lot is with parents to say, okay, do it now, and do it all the time, continuously. We hear a lot about, be consistent and yada. Well, yes, but the real issue is put the effort in 24 hours a day, all the time. You're on.
One of the things that I read recently, which is just hilarious, and we're getting the signal from our Emmy guy over here, is that you should only pick the battles you want to win. That's baloney.
Yeah.
You've got if you pick and choose when you're going to parent, then you're going to have problems all the way down the road. Initially, it's parent.
Yeah.
And set the parameters and goals, because all they're looking for is direction. But if you say, well, I don't want to address this issue, well, that issue's been reinforced then. If I've learned to cry and tantrum to get my way, and you're not going to, I'm not going to address that, then that becomes a learned intent.
At least you can say, I don't like that.
Something. Yeah.
Okay.
Or, yeah. So, well, ignore it. Well, gosh, you might be able to ignore it at 4. You can't ignore it at 14.
Yeah.
There has to be a consequence for all behaviors. The ultimate consequence is prison. Gosh, we don't want them there. I don't want my kids there. We want to have an easy life for all the people that we love. Second week, we're done.
Wow.
Yeah. Want to thank you again.
Thank
The
you.
Autism Sports Foundation is just thrilled to have you with us.
Well,
and
thank you.
the nice thing about it is your next deal, you aren't going to have me. So you and Rebecca are going to be here, and this will be fun. So.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.